Hey everybody. I hope I'm live here. I'm doing it on my laptop, and I'm not entirely sure whether it's live or not. Here we go. Hi everybody. I just thought I'd reach out to everybody today, and because I know that people are probably feeling a little bit disappointed and down over the news that Chattajack has been canceled for 2020. Um, it's a special event that we've all, uh, you know, most of us have done before, and those that haven't have heard about it and are really looking forward to doing it to experience what those of us who've done it before have been lucky enough to experience, because it's much more than just a long paddling race. It's a really a remarkable event, and I'm sure that everyone's feeling a little bit down today because the goal of preparing for that has been taken away, and you won't be going to Chattanooga to race down the Tennessee River at the end of October. So I thought I'd reach out to everyone and let you know that I'm feeling your disappointment, and but have a little chat with you about um, being disappointed because your goals have been taken away from you. It's not the first time that it's happened to an athlete, and it won't be the last. And what you can do, um, given the reality of the situation you now find yourself in. So, I guess before I get started, I'd like to say and throw out a huge thank you to Ben and Kim for attempting to forge ahead with the event. They could very easily have just way back when the pandemic started and we were in the lockdown in March and April, they could have said that, well, you know what, this isn't the year for it. We're gonna put it off this year and hopefully see everyone in 2021. They could have said that. Instead, they didn't. They courageously and hopefully went ahead with registration and their planning, and not only for the usual great event that they run, but to also take into account all the precautions that they would have needed to take to run the event safely during the pandemic. And in so doing, they gave everyone, the better part of at least the first half of the summer, 2 months, June and July, of hope and something to look forward to. And I'm sure that everyone really appreciated that, because I reached out and talked to an awful lot of people, both those that have done Chattajack before and those that haven't. And I know that everyone was training hard and really looking forward to the event. And so, to Ben and Kim, thank you for attempting to pull it off, because it gave everyone something to look forward to in a year where, quite frankly, there hasn't been a lot of things out there to look forward to. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say to Ben and Kim is kudos for making the tough decision to cancel it for this year. And I know that's not one that either of you would have taken lightly. It probably broke your heart to do it and to disappoint everybody. But if you think about it, and I say this to everyone who's now feeling disappointed, if you think about it, it's really the only responsible decision to make. We are living in unique times. There is a global pandemic, and right now it's hitting the United States pretty hard, and it's hitting the part of the country that Chattanooga is in pretty hard, and it would be bringing people together from all over the country, including areas where the pandemic is hitting hard, and would be bringing them all together into one location. And it doesn't take an expert to know that that's a risky proposition. Common sense tells you that when you're dealing with a contagious virus. So, I know that they would have been taking every precaution possible, but at some point, it just becomes a really difficult proposition. And in the grand scheme of things, we should all be concerned about our health and safety, and that of those of us, our friends within the community, as well as the health and safety of our family and friends back home. And all of those things, to some degree, are called into question when we when we go out there and get together for a mega paddle race in the middle of a pandemic. So, it's disappointing, and it's a tough pill to swallow when you wake up in the morning and see the news. But think about it; it's really a decision that's in everyone's best interest. And there will be another Chattajack, another year, and there will be other events to get ready for and to train for. Um, but it, it's not a something like a pandemic and this virus. It's not a concern until you get it, sort of thing. And we'd hate to see anyone who goes to Chattajack and races and makes every effort to be cautious and takes every precaution and still end up going home with the virus and infecting other people, and it's just not worth it. So, again, tough decision from Ben and Kim, but kudos to them for making the tough decision with everyone's safety in mind. So, with that said, I get it. It's disappointing, and there's no easy way to say that it's been canceled and your goal's been taken away from you for the year. But it is worth remembering that as disappointed as we all are that one of our favorite events has been stricken from the calendar this year, there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with lost jobs and lost loved ones. And that's a far greater tragedy than us not having our favorite paddling race this year. So, let's remember that and how lucky we are to all have our health and our wellness and to be able to go out and paddle every day, like we were doing in preparation for a great event like this. The fact that the event isn't going to be held this year doesn't mean that we can't still go out and do the activity that we enjoy so much, and to be out in the water doing what we love doing. And in fact, there's probably no safer place to be in a pandemic. So it doesn't take that away from us. And let's remember how incredibly fortunate we are to have that. The second thing I'd like to say is that all of you who are disappointed about not being able to have the opportunity to race down the Tennessee River Gorge this year, you share something in common with 15,000 athletes, world-class athletes from all over the globe, who should be at this very moment in Tokyo, and they're not. They're going to have to wait till 2021, hopefully, for their chance to compete at the Olympics. And these people, and I don't in any way want to diminish the commitment that anyone was making for their Chattajack preparation. But these Olympic athletes have spent 4 years preparing for their event, and some of them longer than that. And most of the people that I know who are preparing for Chattajack have only spent basically a year, right? Since last year's Chattajack, they've been gearing up for this year's Chattajack. And there's some that have spent less time than that. Some have only started to train since the registration opened and they registered. So, again, not to diminish the commitment that you've made. It's been an outstanding commitment. And I interact with a lot of people who are training for this event, and I know how hard you've been working and how diligent you've been in your training and paying attention to every little detail that could make you better. It's amazing, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring to me to see people making that kind of effort. But for us, this is an event we enjoy doing. It's not life or death, and I'm not suggesting that for Olympic athletes it's life and death, but the stakes are a lot higher, and they've made that much more of a commitment. And their event was taken away from them this year as well. So you're in good company. And so before you feel too bad for yourself, think of how they're feeling and how they're responding. And if you want the truth, most of them are responding by continuing with their preparation for next year, because being an Olympic athlete and preparing for an Olympic Games doesn't allow you to take huge chunks of time off. So they're carrying on, and so too should you if you love paddling. And so I just wanted to share with you one quick story that really puts things in perspective, and it's about disappointment, but it's also about the love of paddling. When I was 16, it was 1979, and I was training with the 1980 Olympics in mind. And I was at a long shot to make the team. I was, like I said, I was only 16, and there was a lot of guys, more experienced guys, older guys in front of me. But hey, when you're 16, you dream big, and I was getting better. I was improving all the time, and I thought, I'm going to give it a go, even if my realistic window for competing at the Olympics was more like 1984. And so I was training really hard for that. And because I did well as a junior that year, I was invited to attend the national team training camp in Florida, which would be held in February and March and April in 1980. And I remember on Christmas Day, actually, in 1979, in the evening before I went to bed, watching the national news and seeing a report from Afghanistan as Soviet tanks were rolling into Afghanistan. And that led to a few months of angry discourse between the United States and the Soviet Union. And ultimately, it led to, while we were all in Florida training in March, it led to the announcement that the United States was going to boycott the 1980 Summer Olympic Games in Moscow. And end of discussion. The athletes had no say in the matter. It was just a decision that was made. The United States is going to boycott. The American government put a lot of pressure on the governments of its NATO allies to join them. Some countries did, some countries didn't. Canada was a country that did join them. And so not only did the American team that was down there in Florida at the same location that our Canadian team was training at, not only did those athletes lose their Olympic Games, but Canadian athletes lost their Olympic Games as well. And I saw athletes who had been training for 4 years, who'd had this dream of competing at the Olympics. I saw them in a day, one day, over a period of one day, hear the news, be devastated, just totally crushed by the news, and pack up their stuff, put their boat in its cover, pack it onto their car or their truck, and leave camp the next morning. And some of them left and were never to be seen again. Think about that. They had their Olympic dream taken away from them, and their way of coping with it, or the disappointment hit them so hard that not only was their Olympic Games taken away from them, but the activity that they loved. They allowed the activity that they loved to be taken away from them as well. Some of them never set foot in a boat again. And if you're like me, and I believe many of you are, in our demographic, which is older people, when I say older, it's people in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Our days as professional athletes are behind us. We would qualify as the hobby athletes, the weekend warrior athletes, the fitness freak athletes. We train because we love to train. We train because we love what it does for our health and our fitness. We train because we like to have a goal, a competitive goal, and still be competitive. But I think we also train because we love paddling. Paddling is our preferred form of exercise. And we enjoy being in the water, and we enjoy the camaraderie of being on the water with other people, whether it's, if we're lucky enough to have people to train with day to day, or whether it's when we see them at races. And, I want you to think about what it would be like if you were so crushed and so disappointed that you walked away from it, never to do it again. And I think of those athletes that dealt with their disappointment in that fashion. And I think, the loss of their Olympic Games and their Olympic dream was definitely, somewhat tragic. But the real tragedy was that the sport, which surely they enjoyed to some level, they allowed that to be taken away from them too. And they never paddled again, some of them. And that is the real shame of that boycott year. And anyway, the Olympics went on without athletes from a number of countries. And I don't know what happened in the United States, but in Canada, Olympic athletes were the only people that made a sacrifice. The government, for a short time, had put an embargo on wheat shipments to the USSR. And the day of the opening ceremonies, they lifted the embargo because it was hurting the farmers too much. So, quite frankly, the athletes were the only people that made a statement about the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and were the only ones that paid a price. And I'm sure it was the same in some other countries. Some athletes went on to compete in 1984. Some went on and competed for a couple of years, but didn't stretch their careers out that far. And as I said, some never set foot in a canoe or kayak again, which is quite a shame. So that's what happened in 1980. And then in 1984, I was in with the Canadian team in Moscow, getting ready for a big World Cup race there. And the Soviet government announced that they would be boycotting the Olympics in Los Angeles that summer, which they invented some contrived reason for it. But basically, everyone knew that it was simply tit for tat, right? You boycotted our Olympics, we're going to boycott yours. But I saw a whole other group of athletes. This time they were from the Soviet Union, but I saw them the next day at the regatta course, and I saw the looks in their faces, and I'd seen it before in Florida in 1980. I'd seen that same look on the faces of my teammates and my friends on the American team. And, I mean, human beings are human beings no matter where they come from. And it was as difficult for them as it was for, my Canadian teammates and my American friends. And it was no more fair for them than it, or no more unfair, I should say, for them than it was for us. And just like what happened when in the 1980 boycott, some of those Russian athletes we saw again, and some of them were never heard from again. Some of them just disappeared. And I talked to these guys when at competitions, and later on, many years later, I got to know some of them quite well, and they said that some guys just disappeared. They just couldn't handle the disappointment, and they just simply disappeared. And what a tragedy. Again, not the fact that their race was taken away from them, but that their sport, their activity that they loved, their, to a large degree, I'm sure you'll all agree, if you're as into paddling as I know many of you are, your way of life was they allowed to be taken away from them, and that's the real shame of it all. So where does that leave us in 2020? Well, it leaves us obviously devastated. Your event isn't going to run, and I know that you're really disappointed, but it's not the end. There are some things out there still to prepare for. Carolina Cup is still a go, and I don't know how long that's going to be for, whether they're going to pull it off or whether it too is going to join the list of canceled events. But there are some local events here or there. But really, the big thing to get excited about is the prospect of virtual racing. I know that the Molokai to Oahu solo race was canceled this year, and they ran a virtual Molokai to Oahu, a virtual M2O, and it was really well, I can't say attended, really well participated in, it by multiple times more than they ever get at the actual event. And people got really excited about it. And I don't know whether Ben and Kim are going to decide to do the same thing for Chattajack or not. That's their call. I could see them doing it. I could also see them thinking that, because I know they're really disappointed as well. And they're probably burned out from, trying to make all the accommodations, safety accommodations to run the event. And then it gets canceled. And, they put the same kind of commitment in that all the people training for it have, and to have it, to have to make this decision must be heartbreaking. So I don't know whether they're going to run an event or not, but if they don't, I know that we will. The Virtual Paddle League will run something of comparable distance. In fact, we have one that's launching next Monday, August 10th. It's a half marathon. We're going to use that to help people prepare for Chattajack. So think of it as the Halfway to Hell half marathon. I think they're calling it the Hauling Holland half marathon. But you know, it's a 21K race, a virtual race that you can do and put your training to the test for. You don't have to do it right away. This event's going to be open all the way through the year. And I guess the big message I'd like to convey is that not having a race, your feature race to participate in this year, is a disappointment. But in some ways, it can be liberating as well in terms of your training. So let me make this case for you. It's a bit of a stretch when you're feeling down because you've lost your event, but it's not a stretch from the perspective of training and what training does for you. So when you're racing week after week, or a couple of times a month, or even just monthly, you tend to get awfully wound up on the performances that you're having each time you go out. And you're training hard, but you're training to those events, and you can be reluctant to take steps that might be necessary to lead to greater long-term improvement because you're focused on your short-term racing and your short-term results. So use, for example, technique, which plays a huge part in performance. Sometimes if you need to make some adjustments to your technique, improvements to your technique, enhancements to your technique, you kind of need to deconstruct things a little bit, because to break the movement pattern that you're currently making, and then be very deliberate about creating some new movement patterns. And that takes time. That requires you to maybe paddle more slowly, to not do workouts with the your training zone and your heart rate and all that type of thing being your focus, but to slow things down and do things step by step and make technique your focus. It's like taking a step backward to eventually take 2 steps forward. But people are reluctant to take that step backward because they've got a race every week or every couple of weeks. And so racing sometimes actually gets in the way of making the types of training, doing the types of training things that lead to greater improvement in the longer term. That's just one example of how racing can actually get in the way of your long-term improvement. And the other thing I would say is that, and I've seen this time and time again in sprint canoe, where it's not the year of training that makes you perform optimally at the end of the season. Like in canoe kayak, we've got one major event a year, the World Championships, and we've got like a bunch of lead-up events to it, selections, World Championship, World Cups, things like that. But there's only one World Championship a year, and that's the biggie. That's what everyone prepares for. And then every 4th year, there's an Olympics instead of a World Championship. And so when you've got one big event a year, people are focusing on that one big event. And it's not the work you do in that season that leads to the highest level of success at the end of the season in the World Championships or the Olympics. It's the work you do the year before that really makes the difference. And I've seen this again and again and again, that people who, and especially too in young athletes who are preparing, say, for the Junior World Championships, which used to be held every 2 years and now they're finally every year. But it would be the work that they would do in the year before the Junior Worlds that would really make a difference in their Junior World year, And it was like if you were waiting till the start of your Junior World season, you were waiting too long to start your serious training. So, to those of you who are, the types that enjoy training, you enjoy the fitness that you get from it, the health gains that you get from it, you enjoy the discipline that it gives you, you enjoy the challenges it presents, and you just like being in the water and working hard, my message to you would be there's no reason to not continue to work hard. You're preparing now for events that are going to be held next year in a hopefully COVID-free world, and including a 2021 Chattajack. And the work that you continue to do this year is going to make you better next year. It just means that the gratification that you get from racing and getting the satisfaction of hopefully achieving your goals is going to be delayed. But you can look at this actually as an opportunity to be better prepared for the events that you would like to do next year. And let's face it too, this year's already been, from the point of racing, for a lot of people a disappointment, because a lot of people were preparing for, Carolina, and it hasn't happened yet. Hopefully it does, but that remains to be seen. There's a whole bunch of other races that people were preparing for that aren't going to go, and now Chattajack has joined that list. But it's you've already in a sense been preparing for next year. Well, that just continues now, and I know it's hard when you were looking for something that was going to happen, looking forward to something that was going to happen 12 weeks from now, to now all of a sudden think that it's going to happen 64 weeks from now, right? Add in the 52 weeks of another year. But the time that it gives you should make you, if you use it well, is going to make you considerably better. So that's something to think about. But I understand everyone's disappointed, and each of you is going to have to kind of weigh your options and think it through. But I think it's important to know that you're not alone. There's lots of other athletes around the world, not just in paddling, but in all other sports, that have experienced the same disappointment that you are now experiencing. And in one way, shape, or form, they're coping with it, and they're moving on, and hopefully continuing in the sport that they enjoy, the activity that they enjoy. And so my message to you again is to remember why we paddle in the first place. It's because we enjoy being on the water. We enjoy the benefits we get beyond racing from our training, the health, the fitness, the endorphins, and we enjoy the community that we do it with. This year, most of our contact with that community has been virtual, but these are people that we see all the time when we go to events, so we're communicating with virtually, and we're all in this together. And you're not experiencing your disappointment in a vacuum. You're not the only one dealing with it. So I feel for you all, and I understand where you're coming from, and I know it's not easy, but there is lots of reason to continue, and it's worth just asking yourself why do you paddle, and how much enjoyment do you get out of it? And if you can sort of do an inventory of those things, I'm pretty sure that the answers that you come up with are going to be fairly persuasive in telling you that it's worth continuing to paddle and continuing to train, perhaps not quite with the same intensity, but you can spread it out over a longer term now, and continuing to enjoy what you very clearly must love, because I just look at the sites like the 100 Paddle Challenge and the Virtual Paddle League, and I see the participation on those sites, and people wouldn't be participating and sharing their experiences there in those sites if they didn't enjoy it, right? So there's no reason that you can't continue to enjoy it and get the benefits from it. And let's also remember that in the middle of this pandemic, when so many things are being taken away from people, unless there's a complete lockdown, people can't take paddling away from us. It's the ideal social distancing activity. And unlike sports that require facilities like arenas and stadiums and facilities that are shut down because of the pandemic, all we need is water and a little patch of land to launch from, and we can go do what we love. So long may that continue. All right, so that's all I got to say. I know you're disappointed, but chin up, and let's be thankful for what we have to be thankful for. And I look forward to continuing to see everybody online, and I look forward to seeing everybody next year at races. Okay, and I wish you the best health and wellness for you and your families and those close to you. And let's go paddle. All right. Thank you.